Peace and blessings, family, and welcome to Labors of Love podcast. We are here to inspire, uplift, and enlighten. Each episode, we will be hearing from Black midwives, doulas, and other traditional childbirth supporters who have dedicated their lives to being of service to Black mothers and families in all aspects of the motherhood journey. It is with great pleasure that we have the opportunity to speak with Aiyana Davison this evening. She is a certified nurse midwife and women's health nurse practitioner-BC, currently practicing in Southern California. A passionate professional, some of her most pressing priorities include shedding light on and aiding to eradicate the inequalities that exist within healthcare, addressing the crisis that Black women and Black people face in the U.S., the provision of quality care for all individuals and families, and the preservation of the legacy of Black midwives and birth work. With this in mind, Aiyana uses her business and social media platforms under the name The Vagina Chronicles to educate, engage, and create safe space for those interested in all things birth work, empowerment, and overall obstetric and gynecologic health. Aiyana has been featured on a wide variety of platforms, including Essence, Peanut, LV, Ovia Health, Mama Glow, and Black Moms Blog. Within her work, she encourages healing through sharing and vocalizing stories, as opposed to the long-standing historical traumatic secrecy, to aid with the advancement and success of vulnerable communities. Thank you so much for being with us. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am so excited this evening. We have the privilege of having a conversation with Aiyana Davison. I know sometimes intros don't always do it justice because we have so many things going on and wear so many hats. So please let the audience know who you are.
Sure. Hello, I'm Aiyana Davison. I am a certified nurse midwife, practicing in Southern California, doing this work as a midwife for a little over 5 years, but been in the birth world for over 10. So I am just loving what it has to offer, and it's been a busy season. Yeah, it's been good. Yeah.
So I always like starting off the show kind of getting a backdrop to how this journey began. So what were your messages around pregnancy, labor, delivery, the woman's body growing up before being introduced to obviously your professional background?
Right. It's funny. I learned if people know who I am, I talk about this quite frequently, but I learned about midwifery through wanting to become an OBGYN. And so, which is very interesting, but so early talks about birth. I don't think we've ever really had a discussion about what birth looks like or what birth means. I'm an only child, so I didn't really attend any additional births, but I do recall seeing like we were either at a science center or it was our health class in school when we were really young, and we were looking at like actual birth, and that was like when I was fascinated by what was going on. Like everyone else was grossed out, and I was like, this is like amazing. As a little kid, like, look, she's bringing life into the world. And that those are my early memories of that. But even more so, my grandmother was actually a certified nurse midwife as well in the island of Antigua, but I didn't find that out about her until her passing, which was before I went into midwifery school. Sorry, I might have been in the midst of midwifery school or just slightly before. So I feel like it's in the bloodlines for sure.
Absolutely. Wow.
Yeah.
That is amazing to make that whole connection and to be drawn to it before even knowing,
Mhm.
all of those things were tying in together. So
Yeah.
it seems like you were fascinated with the mechanics of things prior to
Yeah.
any hands-on experience. So how did how did you come to the conclusion that midwifery was the way for you as opposed to obstetrics or any other aspect of the medical field?
Yeah, so, I will say, like, the door to becoming an OBGYN was, like, repetitively closed in my face, and I'm so
Mm,
grateful for
mm,
it, um, to the point where, like, I was no one could tell me I wasn't gonna be a doctor, like, that was where my mind was at, and I thought that's what I had to do in order to become, like, an OBGYN and to work in the birth world, and I'm so glad that the door was slammed and shut in my face. That was not my destiny. And so, so basically I was pre-med. I was like, I'm gonna be out here helping people have their babies and supporting them. And in my mind, like the OBGYN looked like what a midwife does. So
wow.
like who knows how that even got there, but as I did more training and more schooling, I was like, this is not what it is, and this is not what I envisioned for myself. So I actually entered into a nursing program, a registered nurse program, after having my bachelor's of science and as a pre-med student, and then did that and was, nursing. That's where the doors started to open for me, and so I was like, okay, and now I know I'm walking in the path I'm supposed to be on. So continued on that way, and as I'm in nursing school, began exploring how can I be more available to the birth world, and that's when midwifery kind of really just dropped in my lap, I guess you could say.
Mm,
So yeah, I went exploring that route, and I really haven't looked back ever since. And I'm all for people exploring other options. What was presented to us as like pre-med students where I went was you're either going to be a doctor or a researcher or a dentist. And maybe a physical therapist, but everything else, they didn't talk about other professions like, and so a good majority of our class, we all sat for like the MCAT, which is your entrance exam to medical school. We sat for that together, and I can probably say less than half of us are MDs now. Um,
okay.
so it's unfortunate, but I'm definitely like really keen on getting the word out about midwifery and then other professions in the health sciences because there's so many different realms and things that people can do.
Right. In so many areas in which you are so needed.
Yeah.
So just for the audience to have a understanding, I know a lot of times we get this question of kind of what's the difference between a midwife versus an OBGYN.
Mm.
Are there any like clear distinctions that you experienced in your decision making process?
Yes, absolutely. There's a big difference, and midwifery is an umbrella term too. So we got to start there. And there are different types of midwives, including certified nurse midwife, which is myself. I have a nursing background. There's certified professional midwives, don't require a nursing background. Also, they mostly don't. I'm so sorry. They mostly do not practice in the hospital setting. CNMs or certified nurse midwives can practice at home and in the hospital or at birth centers. And then you have certified midwives who have a science background, and they do like a extended education. And in some states, they can practice in the hospital. But also can practice outside. So that's your midwifery on a whole. But when we're talking about midwifery versus medicine or being an OBGYN, um, so midwives provide low risk care to patients or low risk patients. So basically, if you have a high risk condition, either we can maybe co-manage with a physician, or we're turning over care completely to that physician. We refer you out if there's some kind of high risk complication. But it's not limited to birth, and I say that with kind of a in a soft way because birth is just a very integral part of what we do. However, there's so much more. So, like we do pap smears and cervical cancer screening. Depending on your level of expertise, you can even do some more management with like colposcopy, which is a further procedure that might need to be done depending on what your screening looks like. We do contraceptive counsel and also placement. So I do place IUDs quite frequently, neck Twin-ons, which is like the implant in the arm, and all, pills, that kind of thing. We talk about fertility awareness method, if a patient chooses to do that. We also, there are some midwives who do abortion care or care for those who are suffering from loss, infertility. So there's a wide variety of realms where we can, provide our assistance. When it comes to a physician, though, they are going to deal with mostly the high risk. And so midwives, certified nurse midwives can do what's called first assist in a C-section, meaning they can assist a physician in the operating room. However, they wouldn't be the ones conducting the actual surgery. So depending on what type of midwife you have, where they're located, how their practice is run, and how they're credentialed will determine if they can help out with that. And then physicians, if you're once you come see us and we've determined there's a high risk problem, I would refer to like OB-GYN or sometimes urologist, gynecologist, depending on what's the findings are, sometimes gyn-onc, which is gynecology, oncology, or even a maternal fetal medicine specialist. So that it's interconnected, and that speaks to just a lot about the access that is really needed across the country for more midwifery care. We're really not trying to take away anyone's job. We're just trying to add more healthcare providers to the field so that people get the service that they need. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Wow, that is phenomenal. Like that is a mouthful, a lot of like the umbrella stretches very far and wide as far as what it is that, the services that you provide. And I know for me, it's amazing to have a midwife. But they are family, right? Because you do have them in so many aspects of your life, not just the labor, delivery, or pregnancy process, like throughout the years. And, you build that relationship and rapport. So I find that, that is integral in having that experience when you are in the position to, become pregnant and give birth, to have that connection and that relationship. So as far as with the process of becoming a midwife, how, for those who are listening who feel like they have that calling, they might be, coming to that place where they realize that this is something that they're passionate about, what are some of the things that they can do to kind of prepare themselves for what this process is of becoming a midwife? Because it is so valuable. We need you all.
Yeah, yeah. There's a few different things to look at for sure. And I think a great entryway into the birth world really is becoming a doula or even a birth assistant. You don't have to have necessarily qualifications for becoming a birth assistant. There are trainings that they offer, and you can look into those. And then you attend births and getting some experience, perhaps in like neonatal resuscitation, and these trainings. And then finding your local midwife team who you might want to work with, or a birth center team, so that you can get a little bit of experience. I think that's a great realm. Like I said, too, becoming a doula, if you're really about the birth world work, because that gives you a glimpse into um, so many different aspects of pregnancy, labor, postpartum. And there are different types of doulas, but specifically pregnancy and postpartum doulas. I think that's a really great entryway into the birth world. If you have a chance to shadow a midwife who's local, I would say do that as well. So, what's coming up in conversation amongst a lot of the Black midwife circles that I'm in is really recognizing what it means to be a midwife. This isn't people see it and it's like amazing, you get to attend these births and look at all these babies and these families that you're helping, and that is one side of it. But you're literally on call all the time. Even though I'm a hospital midwife at this point in time, which my plan is to open up a birth center, but like for right now, even though I work and I have shift hours that I go in for, I have patients that are on my brain 24/7. Or when I'm out of town, I have someone has to cover my messages and labs, because this is an ongoing process. Like, the other thing I like to say is, like, we are providers. Like, people kind of just think, oh, like they're just support people. Yes, we support, but like we actually provide care for you. You come to us for your prenatal visit, or we go to your house for that, and we include your family in it. So that's why it's like a whole different realm. But for those who are really seeking out to become a midwife, please take the time to understand what it means. It is a sacrificial job. It's a very much an energy exchange. Not that other, professions aren't, because I think anything in life is just this exchange of energy from person to person. But to exchange energy during a birth is something that requires like inner work, and it also requires debriefing after, and like a method of ritual to kind of like kind of come down off of a birth, or even heal from one, because sometimes we need healing from it, or sometimes the birth has been healing itself for us, or sometimes I feel like I'm more healed than the birth during the birth. But yeah, please take the time to understand. It's not like this is easy, like pick a profession and go. The roads and journeys for people to become midwives can be very treacherous, and especially as you develop into like a black midwife, there are a lot of obstacles that are there. And this is not to be negative, but to be very real about it. Understand the calling. There's some people who can't get away from it. I feel like I'm one of those folks, because like as much as I tried to go through like one door, which would not open, like midwifery was definitely my path. And I feel like had I said no, it would have snatched me back anyway. But understand what the sacrifice is, and some sacrifices might be temporary. We know this in life, but there are times when you may not be able to make it to a function because you're at a birth, or because you need to go in with a client somewhere, and you have to plan kind of around, and there are ways around it. There are things to be done, but it's just understand the heaviness of it and the reality of it. It's a very powerful work, and it's very ancestral work as well. And so taking that on means you're taking on a lot of responsibility and carrying on the legacy of many people before you. So that's what I would say is like, find a way to, if you've never experienced a birth, I mean, you can find one, I'm sure, anywhere now. Like social media makes that all available. Try
Right.
to find a route to like see what a birth looks like. And if you can get in there from like early labor to like active labor, and then the actual birth, then you'll have an idea of what can really go on, what can really go on. So yeah, that's my advice.
No, this is amazing. And you said so many things, and so many things stood out. And I'm trying to like stay on track, but I'm like, ooh, okay.
Maybe if you have to. That's how I kind of live life. If we got to take this detour, we'll be back.
Right, but I think it's amazing because what you spoke to that I don't necessarily hear spoken of enough is that this is a very spiritual and energetic process. And what you spoke about in reference to how you maintain balance as the midwife, as that, conduit in a sense of, the mother safely bringing life into the world, like assisting her. So, do you care to share like some of the things that you do for yourself to maintain that balance?
Absolutely. Within my first 2 years of practice, I really had to be pushed into ritual, and not in it wasn't like I was going kicking and screaming. It was like I wasn't paying attention to myself. And
Mm.
so the first year of practice, I am very much a all in type of person. So 100% to the work that I'm going to do, because I'm out here living my dream in my passion, but it came at a cost. Like my body suffered, my mind suffered. I gained about 50 pounds, and that's like a cortisol response to stressor. It's a very high stress environment. And so I would come home and just sit down, like, and I wouldn't have eaten all day because our days were very busy. Like the practice I was initially at, we were attending like 6 to 7 births on average in a 12-hour shift, and that's busy, busy. So yeah. So depending on where your practice, that's another thing to a word of advice for folks who are exploring. Determine what kind of community environment that you want to go into, and what suits your needs and fits your lifestyle. But back to the ritual part. So I wasn't doing anything for myself. I would just like throw myself in. I'd pick up extra days. I'd be doing bend over backwards for patients, and like you're pouring, pouring, pouring from this cup. We use this analogy all the time, and I was not like pouring into myself at all. And it took like a really hard situation situation, and another Black midwife who was like, you need to start creating ritual for yourself. She's like, if you, whether it's you light a candle before you go in, or you say like your mantras or affirmations, or you listen to a particular song. That started to become really important for me. So like I am adamant about baths because that's just healing for me. Lighting candles. I'm very protective of my time with friends. So they understand, like, of course, like things come up in life, but if I've planned something with you, I try my best to keep to it. Unless it's a time where I really need to, you just things come across and you really need to like settle yourself. So sometimes saying no, that's a really big deal for me. That's been a hard journey. So I'll do that, lighting a candle, and I have some sayings on my wall, like words for myself. I write my intentions, and read them out loud. Those are the things that are important for me. I have a theme for the year, and then I have songs that go with it. So beginning of the year, I was like playing these songs on the way to work every day, just to kind of hype myself up a little bit. And then at the end, if after a hard day, I'm usually either in the tub, writing something on my porch, maybe sitting. Like I have a whole plant, like this area, like with greenery in my house, so or sitting around that, um, or getting some rest. Sleep is super important, and especially if you're in the work where you maybe attend out of hospital, so birth center or home birth, like just take the sleep when you can get it, because you never know when someone's going to call you to say it's time to come in, or I'm thinking I'm having this baby. So rest is really, really, really important. And then when the world opens again a little bit more, travel is so important to me too. So those are some of the things. Journaling's been helpful. I know some midwives who practice breath work, which that's part on my list too. And then also body work. I'd started seeing a chiropractor this year as well, and she's just been amazing. And I'm like, man, I never knew my body could feel this great. Exercise that too. So, um, I can't say it's about balance, because, like, in life, I feel like we're not always like this. Something's always, one or the other. But it's about finding the correct course for you for that time. Like just walking into that and seeing how that feels. Does that feel good to me? And so if it does, that's where I lean in. If it doesn't, I'm out.
I love it. I love it. I absolutely do. Like that is phenomenal. I mean, it can be applied to whatever it is that you're doing, regardless if it's midwifery or whatever your work is, just to be able to stay, grounded or bring yourself back to a space that feels healthier and yeah, more grounded. So I think all of those pointers are amazing.
Oh, sorry, and connecting with other Black midwives and other Black birth workers, because we find everyone's different. Some people are, true introverts and they need their time by themselves to gear up. But also connecting with people who are in the work who look like you and are experiencing some of the same things. It's just key, like absolute key. That's all I'll say on that. Sorry.
And I think that is also, just a great point. And it speaks to kind of what we talk about on this platform. Like it does make a difference to have service providers that look like you, to have people in your space that can share in your experience and have that same kind of foundation and a similar outlook and interaction with the world. So I think that's an important point as well. So for those who are considering or, have had children, but maybe haven't had it through midwifery care, what are some of the things that they can prepare for beforehand to impact their outcomes? I know you mentioned, high risk and how that has to be managed, but what are some of the things that we can be proactive about coming into an experience utilizing a midwife?
Yeah, there's so many things. I'm actually working on a course right now that'll be available either end of the year or earlier next year about pregnancy preparation, because we talk a lot about childbirth prep, but we're not really digging into pregnancy prep. People get pregnant and they're like, "Oh, I didn't know this was going to happen to my body," and it's like easy Google search. And, no shame or shade. It really is our upbringing. We don't talk about it enough. I speak about like things that we historically are very quiet about. Um,
Yeah.
I still feel ancestrally, we were very much a village, and I'm sure there were moments where the women of the community would gather and talk about like cycles, periods, all that stuff,
Absolutely.
and pregnancy and loving on whoever was pregnant in the community in the village at that time. But somehow we've lost our way here, and I think and everyone determines what they're going to do for themselves and how they're going to raise their children. But what I think needs to be the standard is discussion early about what pregnancy means, and not just like what it means to physically carry a baby, but also financially, what it looks like if you work a 40-hour work week and you still have to be pregnant and pay bills, and when can you take that time off? And then what is your job offer? Do you get baby bonding time? That kind of thing. So looking into those things from beforehand. So your finances, can I take off time? Can I use my PTO if I have it? If I'm part time, what does that mean? If I work like kind of a ad lib shift, what does that mean? The nutrition and exercise, I think, again, is often, we focus on like oh, I think the conversation has definitely shifted from like the 50s where it was like you're eating for two, and
Mhm.
now we're like, no, you're not. You're eating to sustain the pregnancy, to make sure you have good energy levels, but also to provide the building blocks for a baby, like a human life.
Mhm.
Nutrition is key. We really don't get enough protein in many of our diets, and that I mean, the data shows that that can actually prevent some of the things that we're seeing. So, good amount of protein, and then exercise too. Our studies that we do have out there, 30 minutes of walking a day while you're pregnant will reduce not only your risk of like diabetes for yourself later on in life, but also your child, type 2 diabetes. So if we're just 30 minutes a day, but then people don't take into account that what their body is doing to change. So they're like, I can't walk the 30 minutes. Like it's so hard for me to. So it's like, well, find an exercise that works for you. Find something that is, it again suits your needs. So prenatal yoga, stretching, getting in the swimming pool, which is okay to do again. And you want to talk to your provider about that specifically, but in a low risk pregnancy, going swimming or getting in the water is very beneficial. Um, and then the mindset, another thing that's often overlooked is postpartum preparation. And so it's really important for folks to consider the grief process of postpartum. Like you lose who you are. Like there's a loss of self, and that's real. And it's not to make anyone feel bad about it. As a matter of fact, we often, I think if a parent were to suggest, I don't care for how I feel about my relationship with my child right now. I think there's a lot of shame that would come from certain communities, but that's the reality of it. Is like, I don't like how my body has changed, or I'm not liking how I feel right now. I'm exhausted, and I really just want this rest. And that's the truth. And there's no shame in that. It's now like, okay, how do we work that into our daily lives? How do we, get you to a place where you're like, okay, I had this moment. I've stepped into it. Now I'm stepping into another one where I'm grieving myself, and I'm also working in partnership. If I'm in partnership, I have the support that I need. So preparing for all of that, people aren't necessarily thinking of everything. And to be fair, we can't predict what's going to happen in a pregnancy, right? Pregnancy and birth are like the most, I call it the predictable, unpredictable, or unpredictable, predictable, however you want to say it, because we know what can happen. Birth, especially for midwives, we study what is the norm, so that when it's not normal, I use that term loosely, we know, okay, it's time to refer, or it's time for us to do something different, or we might need to, check into this a little bit more. But yeah, we can't predict everything, and so sometimes you might end up high risk. And what does that mean? Even thinking about having your baby early, like what does that look like for you and your partner? What does that look like for you and your support team? Yeah, you might have been prepared for 38 weeks or 40 weeks plus, but you're here at 30 weeks and have had a baby. So what does this now mean for your job, for your home, for your community? Things that we don't talk about. And so I really want folks to focus on what they can do, And again, that's moving, that's eating well, but that's also feeding your soul, developing your support system, looking into who you want as a provider. Like, do you want to be at home or in the birth center for your birth? Okay, what does that mean? Or are you like, I don't know that I can take the pain and I just want to get this epidural. So what does that mean? Can you get a midwife in the hospital system that you're at? What is their call system like? Will your midwife actually be at your birth? Or will your doctor actually be at your birth? All important questions to ask. And sometimes we're not answering them until we're like 20 weeks into the pregnancy or 35 weeks into the pregnancy. And it's like, well, we could have had this conversation a long time ago. So,
Wow.
this is
Yeah.
good.
And definitely just valuable information. So I know the time goes by so quickly, but I'm trying to get, because you're just it's so many aspects of this and so much information that needs to get out, right? So as far as I know, you mentioned classes, um, and for me, education is invaluable. We don't know what we don't know, and like you spoke of, you know. From an indigenous standpoint, we went through rites of passage. That was an opportunity for us to get all of these things on board. So, like, myself, I didn't realize until I was 25 and about to have, found out I was pregnant with my first child that I'm like, oh, okay, let's dig into this, as opposed to having certain things on board coming into this. So what are some of the services that you offer that is open to the general population?
Right now, for speaking specifically for me,
Yeah.
My friend and myself, she is a licensed clinical therapist. We recently did a postpartum prep group. So that's preparing for postpartum. It was absolutely amazing. 6 weeks. We had a small group, but very impactful. And, the feedback that we're getting, they're like, I'm so glad we talked about this. And again, it's not just a physical, it really is more the mental part, and supportive things like, it's funny because some of them started off saying, well, I don't want anyone to come over after. And then as they progress into the pregnancy, they're like, I might need the help.
Yes.
And then to right after, like they had their baby, like, I'm so glad that even though I didn't want XYZ here, that this person was here, so talking about that and just being open to the process of birth and postpartum. So that is coming back. I believe we'll start up again in January. So I can leave my website information so people can get on that. And then, like I mentioned too, I'll be releasing a pregnancy preparation group. This is like a self-paced learning, so you can watch the videos at any time, and that'll be coming up probably in 2022. So you'll get that. Otherwise, mostly I'm talking about like healing, self-help, vaginas on my platform on Instagram, which is the Vagina Chronicles, as much as I'm able to, and again, that feel good situation, because I was doing a lot, I was pouring in a lot there, and it's like okay, well, it's an investment, so people will also have to invest in me as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
So we'll definitely have all of that information in the description. That way you can just click on it. You don't have to figure out how to spell things or anything like that. I'll make sure all of those links are there. Definitely, if you found some valuable information in this conversation, please share. That's why we're here. We want to continue the conversation and normalize the dialogue about this whole amazing transformative process that we all experience in some way, shape, or form, whether from the support standpoint or actually physically going through it. This is definitely something that connects us all. So I appreciate you so much, Aiyana, for coming on and just sharing so much knowledge and wisdom with us. I appreciate your energy and the work that you are doing, and I would love to stay connected.
Yes, absolutely. If your listeners have more questions, we can figure it out. I'll come back.
Yes, you heard it here, right? You will be back.
Yeah.
Yes. No, that is greatly appreciated. So again, yes, definitely reach out. Let us know. Share. Click on those links. Stay connected. Get the information that you need, and you are truly appreciated.
Thank you.
Peace and blessings, family.